On April 20th, 2026, it is clear that Rumen Radev's Progressive Bulgaria party dominated the parliamentary elections in a way this country hasn't seen since the fall of communism. Approximately 45% of the vote, winning them over 130 seats. A clear majority, so no coalition is needed. This is Rumen Radev's parliament now. This is a victory that, I think, has the potential to reshape Bulgaria's political landscape. Here's the breakdown. Progressive Bulgaria got about 45% of all votes, which gives them about 130 plus seats. Next are GERB CDC, the party of Boyko Borisov, which got about 13.5%. And they're fighting for second place with PPDB, the Reformer Democratic Party, which sits at around 12.8% at the time of recording this. But the two parties, GERB and PPDB, have been fighting, as I said, for second place as the votes keep getting counted. By now, it is pretty clear that GERB is going to be second place, but the difference is small, so both GERB and PPDB got the approximately same amount of seats. After them is DPS Novo. This is Delan Peevski's party, which got about 6.6%. This is a very big loss compared to last elections. And lastly, the party Revival got 4.3%, which means that they barely made it into the parliament. The gap between the first and second place is around 31.5 percentage points. That's roughly 3 times more votes, and it's a wipeout by any measure. For a country that's held 8 elections since 2021, that kind of dominance is almost unthinkable. So where did these votes come from? The largest chunk of defectors that switched to preferring Progressive Bulgaria this election actually came from previous PPDB voters, according to sociologists. PPDB led the 2025 December protests. They mobilized hundreds of thousands of Bulgarians, demanding an end to corruption, demanding change. And then those same voters, the ones most passionate about reform, most frustrated with the deep state, chose Radev over them. The answer to why lies in how PPDB communicates, in my opinion. They're elite, technocratic politicians. They're positioned a bit above the common folk. They speak in policy jargon that the average person doesn't really understand or care for. They wanted to prove they alone are the hope for genuine reforms. They have consistently refused to ally with like-minded opposition parties such as the Anti-Corruption Coalition and citizen organizations such as Burets. That approach hasn't been working. In Bulgaria, you need to be popular to win. That doesn't necessarily mean becoming populist, although that generally doesn't hurt electoral success. People are tired of slow, methodical progress couched in bureaucratic talk. They don't fully understand what these parties are doing to combat inflation, handle energy crises, manage housing costs, or healthcare reforms, which are all issues that directly impact their daily lives, but they're boring. So instead, voters went with the sweet-talking newcomer, the one offering hope and seemed different from the status quo. This pattern appeared with Trump in 2016, it appeared with AfD in Germany in 2025, and now it's appeared in Bulgaria. The December 2025 protests achieved their goal, partially, of forcing the government's resignation. They showed that Bulgarian civil society could still mobilize and demand change. For a brief moment, it seemed like the reformists might actually have their chance. Then Radev stepped in by resigning from his presidency mid-term and quickly, very quickly, forming a new party. He endorsed the protests. He called for government resignation as well. And when the political vacuum opened up, he filled it with Progressive Bulgaria, a party that promises everything: anti-corruption, better wages, better healthcare, better infrastructure, more security, etc. The promises sound great at first glance, but look closer and there's actually not many concrete steps on how any of it gets achieved. Let's look at the policies, the plan stated by Progressive Bulgaria. Now, I'm perfectly aware that voters generally don't read these plans. They listen to what the leader says on TV or on social media nowadays. But these plans might give us pretty good insight into what the party plans to do, potentially, but also what their general vision is about the country and what is their level of competence when it comes to solving the problems that they identify as problems. So, I sifted through Progressive Bulgaria's plan, and I'm going to do a little review of it here. So, Progressive Bulgaria says that they want to decrease inequality. That's one of their main goals. They also say they want to increase automation and AI in the workplace. Actually, AI is a pretty big part of the plan, and we're going to discuss that more in the future. But these two goals, decreasing inequality and increasing automation, specifically with AI, these two goals are at best mutually exclusive. The thing is, automation doesn't automatically lead to wage increases. In fact, it might do the opposite. By decreasing worker marginal productivity, companies have less incentive to raise wages. You can't simultaneously promise workers more money while also telling them that they'll be replaced by machines. If you're curious to know more about this, namely worker marginal productivity and automation, please feel free to check out my 1 hour long video review of the book Power and Progress that I posted not so long ago, which you can see in the upper part of the screen or in the description below. There is this pervasive AI element in their plan. They emphasize creating centralized AI-driven systems for monitoring and high-level decision-making. That sounds like a slightly dystopian centralization of power to me. More direct control over citizens and not more freedom. It reads more like science fiction or Silicon Valley hype than serious governing program. They say they'll fight corruption, but Radev has never explicitly named Peevski or Borisov in his anti-corruption rhetoric. That's a strange kind of uncompromising fight, one that doesn't actually name the enemies. The central question is whether this is a governing program or just an electoral message. And I think it's the electoral message without that much substance. Let's look at the economic promises they do. The economic promises contain multiple structural contradictions that cannot all be fulfilled simultaneously. So, contradiction 1, wages, AI, and equality. The program promises accelerated income growth, extensive AI implementations, and reduced inequality. These three goals are economically incompatible in the near term. AI automation typically reduces labor's share of income. Companies adopt automation precisely to reduce labor costs. So the program offers no mechanism for how all three, so wages, AI, and equality, can be achieved together. Contradiction 2, low taxes, social programs, and fiscal stability. The program pledges to maintain low, flat taxes, which has been the case in Bulgaria for a long time, while simultaneously promising to overcome poverty, step up funding in healthcare and education, and ensure social justice. Without progressive taxation, meeting these social obligations would require either large deficits, which contradicts the stable financial policy that they promise, or it requires severe cuts to services, which contradicts the promised quality. Instead, they are aiming to outright replace a lot of services with AI, which is likely going to lead to a reduction in quality. And also, no cost estimates are provided for any major program. Contradiction 3. The 4-year catch-up. Bulgaria has been catching up to European living standards for over 30 years, with very limited success. The program offers no new structural mechanism to explain why 4 more years would succeed where 3 decades have not. The promised accelerated growth is just words. It lacks any credible pathway. Contradiction number 4. EU trade ambitions combined with Euro rejection. So Progressive Bulgaria's program emphasizes integrating Bulgarian business into European and global value chains, strengthening trade relations with traditional European partners and achieving EU income levels. Yet Radev himself proposed a referendum on Euro adoption in 2025, which is an explicitly anti-Euro position. The contradiction is not just rhetorical. Bulgaria's economic integration with the EU depends significantly on currency alignment. The euro removes exchange rate risk, facilitates trade, attracts investments, and embeds Bulgaria deeper in European economic structures. Radev's referendum proposal, if it had succeeded, which it couldn't, would have delayed or derailed euro adoption entirely. The Constitutional Court ruled that the referendum on euro adoption is unconstitutional. Bulgaria's EU accession treaty already commits the country to adopting the euro. So the referendum was never legally possible, but that's precisely the point. Radev's position exploits this confusion. Pro-EU voters hear, "I support euro adoption" in his campaign, while the Eurosceptic voters understand that demanding an impossible referendum effectively means "I'm trying to fight for your sovereignty." This is the same ambiguity that characterizes everything about Progressive Bulgaria and Rumen Radev, a pro-European face for Brussels, simultaneous with a sovereigntist nod to Moscow-aligned voters. The program promises deeper EU trade integration, while the party leader simultaneously campaigned on delaying the very currency that makes EU trade integration work. Let's talk a little bit more about their AI proposals. Beyond the economic contradictions lies a maybe even deeper concern, something that I don't believe is ever going to happen. I think it's never going to even reach the initial planning stages, but this is what the party officially proposes and spends quite some time describing in their official plan. It's called the Sigma AI system. Sigma, which stands for Система за интегриран граждански мониторинг и анализ, or translated, System for Integrated Civic Monitoring and Analysis. And this would create a centralized AI system to monitor all public procurement, detect suspicious contracts, and automatically block assignments flagged by algorithms. On the surface, this sounds like modernization. In practice, it creates enormous centralized power with basically no accountability. The program of the party explicitly states one goal is to minimize the human factor in critical phases. This removes human accountability from decisions that affect public spending. When AI wrongly blocks a legitimate contract, who's responsible? When algorithms flag a political opponent vendor as suspicious, who checks the bias? The system would concentrate power in a single technological platform controlled by the executive branch. Rather than empowering civil society to monitor government, it creates a technocratic overlay that replaces citizen oversight with algorithmic oversight. The capacity for political weaponization with no described safeguards is also really a thing. It's actually quite ironic that people who voted against technocracy also voted for a party that proposes an AI big brother. Think about that. One of the main points of Progressive Bulgaria's plan is judicial reform. That's their first priority. But this creates a challenging political situation, a challenging political dynamic. Reforming the Supreme Judicial Council and legitimizing a new chief prosecutor, which is something that is quite important to do in Bulgaria because the current one is illegally in their place and does not want to step down, requires a 2/3 parliamentary majority, so 160 votes. Progressive Bulgaria has around 130 seats. Even with PPDB's about 30 seats, reaching 160 is mathematically might be possible, but it requires near unanimity from the reformist bloc. And constitutional reform still needs to pass through parliamentary procedures where opposition from GERB and DPS, so the parties who directly benefit from the current system, can delay, obstruct, and shape the final outcome through amendments and procedural tactics. So also a possible collaboration between PPDB and Progressive Bulgaria, although with the shared goal of clearing out the judicial system, will further alienate a big chunk of PPDB's supporters, because a lot of the democratic supporters in Bulgaria are actually staunchly against Progressive Bulgaria and the sort of post-communist flavor that they bring to Bulgarian politics. So all I'm trying to say is that even though there might be a majority in the parliament that wants to do a judicial reform, and they might have the support of PPDB, the decision will still be extremely difficult to achieve. Here is a central question that Progressive Bulgaria just doesn't want to answer. And that is, Radev served as president of Bulgaria from 2017 and 2026. He was the head of state during precisely the period he diagnoses as a catastrophic failure. To be clear, the Bulgarian president is not a powerful executive role. It is largely ceremonial. Radev could not have personally reversed the country's trajectory. But he could appoint caretaker governments, veto legislation, and issue public statements, but he had limited direct power. But that is precisely the paradox. During his 8 years as president, Radev was the ultimate guardian of the state. He oversaw the constitutional reform of 2023 that supposedly dramatically accelerated institutional atrophy. He appointed the caretaker governments that governed during periods of political instability. He used his vetoes and his platform, and yet the country, by his own account, collapsed into dysfunction. Now he returns as a candidate for radical change, as an anti-establishment reformer who will dismantle the system he helped oversee. His presidential record provides no evidence that his governance will differ from the system he now promises to replace. What exactly changed between 2017 and 2026 that makes Radev now the solution for so many people? The program of the party offers no answers on that, and the silence itself is quite significant. Now let's talk a little bit about geopolitics. After his win, Radev has already started making statements about Bulgaria's place in Europe. He says that Euro leaders like Macron, Meloni, and Merz are calling for direct negotiations with Putin. His statement is only partially true. Merz is actually still staunchly against direct negotiations. And both Macron and Meloni suggested not that individual leaders engage in talks, but rather that an EU envoy represents the entire Union. Radev is selectively interpreting what other European leaders say to fit his predetermined position, which is that we should start talking with Russia. I think negotiations with Russia are bound to be ineffective until Russia shows a serious commitment to ending its aggression. Remember what happened in 2025. As soon as the USA-backed peace negotiations started, Russia escalated their assault on civilian housing and energy infrastructure, especially during the brutal winter of 2025-2026. Russia is unwilling to talk seriously unless Europe agrees that Ukraine needs to concede more of its territory and sovereignty. What's the point of engaging in dialogue then? Russia likely sees this as an opportunity to stall or to end the war on their terms and declare victory before their economy collapses. And this is precisely the direction in which Radev wants to take Bulgaria. And I believe that he will find quite a lot of opposition from Europe, despite saying that his opinion aligns perfectly with Europe's biggest leaders. We already made a video about the parallels between Orban and Radev, which you can see by clicking on the link here or in the description below. However, let's take a quick look at the structural parallels between Progressive Bulgaria's victory and Viktor Orban's 2010 triumph. In 2010, Orban had a very strong anti-corruption message, same thing as Radev, which is to dismantle the oligarchic model. The mantra of let's vote the corrupt people out is basically the same as Radev's goal to remove the pyramid that controls Bulgarian deep politics. Orban had an ambiguous EU position, basically throughout the whole time, maybe a bit less in the beginning of his term and progressively more and more. Radev is basically the same. He's ambivalent from the very beginning. He is, on paper, pro-European, but there's always this but that is revealed in his communications and his rhetoric that just suggests that he is actually probably not pro-European. And perhaps the final parallel that I can make between Orban's win in 2010 and Radev's win in 2026 is that Orban had a supermajority and he had basically full control over the government. In Radev's case, it's not a supermajority, but it's a very big majority, which is unprecedented in Bulgarian political history. And it gives Rumen Radev's party quite a lot of power. But there is a key difference between Orban and Radev's campaigns. When Orban won in 2010, he had spent 4 years in opposition. Radev, by contrast, served as president for 8 years. This creates an irreducible tension. The anti-establishment candidate is the establishment, right? The reform candidate was the highest office holder during the period requiring reform. So why didn't he do anything the whole time? So let's come to the central question and sort of the conclusion. Bulgaria now has a prime minister who won a landslide victory on promises of change, on anti-corruption rhetoric, on vague but ambitious promises for a better future. The fact that he promised so much, so many different aspects of the country need to change, so many different policies need to be changed, so many economic changes in business, in geopolitics, in everything, suggests that a lot of people who voted for him will be disappointed. This year is going to be, 2026 is going to be marked by, oil crisis, energy crisis, which basically continues ever since COVID and the invasion of Ukraine, he, I think, will not do a good job in this sector, and people will get pissed off. Also, the question, will Radev actually confront the deep state, or is he actually working with it the whole time? My personal opinion is that he is part of the deep state, because he never named Peevski or Borisov. He never committed to personalized accountability, right? The anti-corruption work that actually threatens the system. His policy platform is long on aspiration and short on pathways on how to achieve things like fighting corruption. Plus, his campaign was funded by so much money. Where does this money come from? How did you get so much support on social media all of a sudden with very suspicious origins, right? We can almost, clearly say that there was a lot of bot activity used in the propagation of their content on TikTok, for example. Further, the economic promises that progressive Bulgaria makes are internally contradictory, right? We saw this. The Sigma AI system that they proposed, which is very dystopian, creates a new centralized power that diminishes accountability. His 8-year presidential record provides basically no evidence that governance will differ from the system he now claims to oppose. Maybe he will surprise us, and maybe progressive Bulgaria will govern differently from the oligarchic status quo. And maybe they'll try to deliver actual reform, really change Bulgaria's trajectory. Who knows which trajectory this exactly will be? In my opinion, it's going to be more pro-Russian. It's going to perhaps try to replace some of the oligarchs like Borisov and Peevski with others. I think it might be just a new variant of the same model. The same players, different faces, but the same underlying structure. So the next few years will tell what happens. Whether he'll make the 4 years or not is still hard to say. There is a chance that, judging by what happens in Bulgaria typically, he might get booed out of his position in less than 4 years. And for Bulgaria, and all of you fellow Bulgarians watching, this could be one of the most important moments since the transition to democracy. So, let's see what happens next. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel. These are free, they don't cost you anything, but they help me tremendously. So I'm not just asking it out of vanity. I want YouTube to see that people enjoy this content and that you're interested in seeing more. If you know someone that needs to see this video, please share it. Even just one other person is going to make such a big difference to me. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.